Welcome back to Connect to Success on RVN TV. I am your host, Mike Rabinowitz, here with a special guest today in studio, which is wonderful. I'm so happy this is happening. Lisa Linkowsky of Milestone Franchising, the founder and CEO of Milestone Franchise, excuse me.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me, Mike.
Thank you for being here. So, Lisa, the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And your franchise organization fell by the wayside, but rather than let it kind of get you down and keep you down, you were able to do this tremendous pivot into Milestone Franchising. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I was a franchise owner for 7 years, and then, like you said, the pandemic, overnight, boom, took it out. And in franchising, there's different types of franchises, and the one that I was with is called an emerging franchise, which means that it's a brand new franchise system. And so I was one of the newest that came on board. And so for the past 7 years, I had really helped to kind of help nurture and train and do mentoring, et cetera. And so pivoting into being a consultant was a natural progression for me.
Sure. So what does that entail? And I'm asking because the world of franchising, we kind of spoke offline about this, is so foreign and almost ethereal, where people are doing it, people are having a ton of success, and people own their own franchises, but I feel like nobody knows how they got started, nobody knows how the process looks, nobody knows where to begin.
Right, and how you get in.
Yeah.
Like, what's the secret code or password?
Are you going to share it with us?
So no one knew I didn't know about people like me when I bought my franchise. I had no idea.
And you bought your franchise 7 years ago originally?
Yeah, 7 years ago, and I had contacted them directly, and because it was something I ended up finding out about, but I didn't know people like me existed. I had no idea. And so what I do is I'm a guiding light for people that have an interest in franchising. When people think about franchising, they think food. And there's a whole vast world out there. There's over 4,000 franchises. And yes, food comprises a very large percentage.
Sure.
But then there's all different industries, over 30 different industries that, everything you could think of, conceivable.
Do people say, I want to franchise this specific store, or I want to be a franchise owner and direct me? I don't really care which one, and we can have that conversation.
So for me, I'm working with the people that are at a crossroads in their career, and they've got some sort of pain. They have, met their end in the corporate world, either by force or by choice. And so they're looking what that next chapter is. And so I'm helping to explain to them different franchises and what would be good for them, and also would they even be a good owner, because not everyone's going to be a good owner. For the people that have a concept that they think that it should be franchised, that's a separate world, and I can make that introduction to help them with that. But really, I'm focusing on the people that want to become an entrepreneur, that want to become a business owner.
How do you flesh that out? You made the comment that we don't even know if they're going to be a good owner. Are you the one telling them, hey, maybe this isn't for you as a consultant?
Yes, and it's not always the funnest conversation to tell someone that. But again, if they're in pain, sometimes they're making rash decisions. And sometimes because they're panicking, maybe they can't get a job back in, maybe they've been let go. And so now they're kind of in panic mode, which is not a good time to make a big, important decision like this. So I really talk with them about what their business background is, what their acumen is, what are their weak spots, what are the things that they really enjoyed about in their business. And one of the things that I always tell people is networking and being able to do business development is critical across every franchise, because you're the face, you're it. There's no one else. So if going out and meeting people and setting up a tent at your local farmer's market about your business is not something that kind of gets you excited,
you're selling yourself every single day, and now you're not only selling yourself, but you're selling an idea, and it's not necessarily your idea, right? And so is that a difficult match to say, okay, you are ready to have your own franchise, but what's the right, is it food? Is it a gym? Is it something in technology? How do you put those together?
So I give a full assessment, and I ask different industries that people might be interested in, and then I'll always throw them a curveball of something as I've been talking with them that I think might be interesting, but they didn't express it anywhere. And I always say that I'm like, I'm going to show you something. You're going to be like, what? But I go, just listen, go on this journey with me. it's a learning experience. The entire time, all you're doing is learning. You lose nothing by doing that. You gain education and information. And then I give something called a Zoracle assessment, which is specific to franchising.
Sure.
So in the corporate world, there's a caliper. There's a caliper and a DISC assessment that are given. And like if you're looking to become promoted within your business, sometimes they'll give that to you to assess how good you would be with your team. And so this is something different. This is about really addressing what your overall business, again, I'm going to use that word acumen is, and it highlights what your strengths or weaknesses are, and it's specific to franchising, which is even better. And it shows like what kind of culture that you would best fit in, what your values are, and every franchise is very different, and what they focus on is very different. So then that helps to align and really narrow it down for these people.
So how does so I understand it from a kind of a top line level, but when you take these people, you nurture them essentially, when do you kick them out of the nest and say fly? How long are you with them from inception of idea through, if it's a store, here are the keys? How does that work?
So I'm with them from the beginning all the way until the end when if they are awarded a franchise. So they say, yes, I would like to do this, and the franchisor says, yes, we would like you on board. I'm with them all the way until that point, but then I stay in touch with them to see how things are going and, in touch base. I just have a candidate that just came on board with a concept in Maryland, and I said, as soon as you get your shop open, I'm coming to visit you, and if you need anything and I can help you with any kind of referrals for any kind of type of industries, then I'm going to help you with that as well. But really my job is done at the point that they have been awarded that franchise.
What do you think it is that you love about your job? Because you're very passionate about it, and you can tell that you've taken your experience and you've lent it to people that don't have the benefit of your experience, both negative and positively.
Right.
Is it the relationship building? Is it the fact that you are able to grant some type of wisdom and guidance to people that maybe you didn't have when you were first starting?
It's a mix of all of that. So, being a business owner, it's the American ideal, right? It's what everyone thinks that they want. And so being able to help someone to make that decision, make it well, right? Give them enlightenment about the whole thing, really helping them to understand the whole process, explaining it to them, guiding them throughout that entire, piece of it. And then watching that happen is extremely fulfilling. It really is. It's very fulfilling. And typically when there's an economic upset, franchising has a boom.
Right.
And so we're seeing that again now. Small business applications are through the roof. What used to take a couple weeks is now taking months to get a business loan, right? Because there's so many applications happening out there. But it's also thrilling. Like, it's such a great thing for people to be able to do and have that autonomy and have that, something that they can then have, maybe that's legacy that they can then hand on to their family members. It's great to see something like that.
Are those, and I know you're not generally having the conversation of why you should be a franchise owner, because most of the people you're working with, I want to be a franchise owner and maybe I shouldn't be. But when you were talking to people and they say, well, why would I want to own a franchise? What would you say to them?
So I would say to them, what are the things that are not being checked off in your life right now? So is it work-life balance? Is it that you're not getting the proper due from your employer? You're making them all this money and you're not really seeing that return for yourself. Is it that you aren't being heard? Right? So as a female in the corporate world, in manufacturing, that was a struggle for me. I wasn't heard a lot. So are you not being heard? There's all different things that people have, and maybe they're not even aware of it. Or here's another one. They've been doing the same thing for 20, 25 years, and they're done. They're just done with it. That's all they ever did, and they're done, and they want something brand new. And whatever they've been doing is not waking them up and getting them excited to get out of bed each day, and so they want something brand new and something exciting. So there's all different reasons that people look to do something like this.
You mentioned that you almost have to feel the struggle or the hurt or the debilitating, I've done this every day monotony of a 9-to-5 job to make this type of switch. Do you ever see young professionals straight out of college or without real career acumen saying, this is exactly what I want to do, or does it take the pain?
So I don't think it takes the pain. I think it takes experience, right? I think that's really critical. I talked to a young person in his early 20s, and he is looking to become a business owner, and we had a very in-depth conversation about that. And he was going to get financial help from his family, because that's another piece when you're young, like maybe you don't have that financial backing, so you would need that from somewhere. But he was really together. He really knew, he had already done research. Like he was more together than sometimes some of the older people that I talked to, quite honestly, because he had already started looking at it. So you do get that. You don't get it as often, but you will have that.
It's fascinating, and it is, again, such a world that people only hear about and don't get to figure out how to get involved and familiarize themselves. Wanted to take a step back. I know that you've made this pivot in your career as an entrepreneur. Were you always entrepreneurial? You were a franchise owner, so yes, but prior to that, when you were 20 years old, did you know this was the path that you were going to walk down? Not
at all. No, my father owned his own business.
Okay.
And I watched him struggle mightily in his business. So yeah, we both, my brother and I, were like, nope, not going down that road, because it was tough. Went the corporate path, did that whole thing. But toward the last 10 years of my corporate career, I'd become a project manager.
Okay.
And so I went from my background was marketing, and I went into this project management role where I was doing everything. I was doing logistics, I was doing account management, I was doing all these different areas, and I was really loving having my hand in all these different arenas and listening at management meetings and hearing all the things that were taking place within, you know? And I look back and I go, that was the first sign, because I wanted to know everything that was making that company hum, and I wanted to be a part of that. But I had no idea. But then I worked from home for 10 years, well before it had become the thing to do. And I realized that being in a corporate world was not for me anymore. I had no interest.
Just a switch.
Well, I had been working from home as a project manager for 10 years, and I knew I could not go back in. Could not. Like, I would break out in a sweat just thinking about going back in, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm like, well, now what do I do? What is it telecommuting was not the thing back then.
No.
So then the next obvious thing was, own my own business. Sure. I get the freedom to do what I want, when I want, how I want. I'd been working on my own from home for 10 years. So now it was just a matter of taking it and making it myself.
I want to let you know that you really downplayed the next thing was just to own my own business, and this is where we are. It was this easy step. I want to get to that. We do have to take a break.
Okay.
Lisa, appreciate it. We'll be back on the other side. Thank you.
Kinda new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on the flip side of the commercial. Again, we are here with Lisa Linkowsky. I'm Mike Rabinowitz, your host. Lisa's been teaching us about the big, bad, dirty world of franchising. Not exactly. Milestone Franchising, you're the founder, you're the CEO. I've learned a lot here today. I think our viewers have also learned a lot here today. How do you find the people that you're working with that are these potential franchisors?
So there are people that go into the internet and they go and they start clicking around.
Sure.
And so you can find people that way, because once they click in the portals, then that information gets sent out. Then there's, LinkedIn, reaching out to people via LinkedIn, marketing, networking, tremendous amount of networking. Yep. I work across the country, but I specialize in central New Jersey and Bucks County.
Okay.
That's where my franchise was, and so I've made a lot of connections and did a lot of work within that area. And so now that people can start to meet in person, I'd love to meet with people actually face to face, which is great.
So are you, hunting is a bad word, but how do you know that they're interested when you're on LinkedIn? You're going on LinkedIn and saying, this could be a potential person I'd like to speak with, whether they're a referral source or a friend or anything down the line. But do you get a feel of somebody that could potentially be a client of yours?
Yeah, so you talk about, have they ever thought about being a business owner? And sometimes people are immediately like, yes. I've always thought about it. That's the person I'm like, let's start having a conversation. And I say, you don't know anything about this, right? Like it's just something that's been in the back of your head. So let's just start exploring it. Let's just talk about it and have a conversation and take the journey.
And one begets another, and all of a sudden,
That's
you're
it.
looking at things in a more granular level, I'd imagine.
Exactly. It's like a framework. This is what I say to people. You got to build the foundation, then you start putting up the walls, then you have the roof, right? You just start building that whole framework for them. But in the beginning, they can't, all they have is an empty lot and they're just staring at it.
Well, so they come to you or you come to them and help them realize an idea that maybe they've only had deep down.
Right.
Do they pay you for that?
Nothing. They don't
They
pay
pay
me
you
anything.
nothing.
No. It's like an executive recruiter. So in the corporate world, an executive recruiter, works with you to go find the best job that's fit for you. When they place you, then they're compensated by that company. So same thing here. If someone is awarded a franchise, I'm compensated by the franchisor, but we're heavily regulated by the Federal Trade Commission.
Okay.
So it has to be a fee that's separate from what the franchisee is paying. Meaning if they knock on a door of a franchise and say, I want to own this franchise, they're going to pay the same amount if they go direct or whether they work with me. So work with me, because now you get the experience of my knowledge and this vast world that I represent, instead of just this narrow focus of, well, I think that this is a good thing for me. I don't know why, but I think it's good for me.
So essentially what you're saying is anybody that has thought to themselves, I'd like to run my own business one day. Why not come speak with you?
Absolutely.
And you guys can almost vet each other out. They can learn as much as possible from you. You can learn about them and see if you keep going forward. But you are just a resource into this world that many people would like to get themselves into.
Yeah, it's an entree. And there's different. In franchising, you would ask me, is there only brick and mortar, right? So people think it's only food, it's only brick and mortar.
Like McDonald's, right?
Right.
Like gyms.
No, there's home-based businesses, which are so popular right now because people like this whole, working from home concept. Then there's service-based businesses, so you have the vans that are zipping around and they're fully wrapped, right? So that could be a franchise. Then you have an office that's in like a light industrial park where they don't actually want people walking in, but they're working with business to business. That's another concept. And then you have the good old-fashioned brick and mortar.
Is there a database that is of all the franchisors?
Is there a database? I don't know. I'm sure someone somewhere has it, right?
But for you to know what's available, you are out there.
I am a member. So I'm a member of a group called IFPG, which is the International Professional Franchising Group. I get tripped up. IFPG. And they're a broker group.
Right.
So belonging to them, I now have access to the hundreds of franchises that are a member with them.
Okay.
So that's how I then have that access.
Okay. When you meet these potential franchisees, is there one piece of advice that you give them, maybe you wish you had when you were starting?
Yeah, so networking, critical. I didn't really do very much networking. I was just, one hand tied behind my back, blindfolded, and off we go. So networking, getting yourself out there, being the face of your company, learning, taking in, but really networking.
Okay.
Because then you can talk to other business owners, you can talk to other people. We talked about what if someone wants to be an entrepreneur. Some people are completely boxed in by the concept of a franchise because they're handing you everything. They're giving you this whole recipe, this whole cookbook, and now you've got to go and cook it exactly to the exact measurements and specifications. Some people don't like that. They don't, that's too confining for them. So when I'm sitting there and I'm talking with them and giving them this advice, understanding whether or not that's something for them, if they're going, you brought up McDonald's before. So you can't go into McDonald's and say, that secret sauce on that Big Mac?
We're changing it out.
We're going sriracha all the way, right? They're going to pat you on your head and send you on your way because they have teams of people that are the expert for doing that. So with a franchise, you're just doing what it is. So you've got to accept the franchise, you've got to accept the system, work the system, and then you're good to go.
You ever talk to people that you decide franchising isn't for you, but you should go down the creating your own LLC, creating your own business path, and are you able to help there?
So oftentimes what ends up happening, especially for those home-based businesses that I mentioned earlier, the person gets that master class for 10 years because oftentimes a franchise is like a 10-year agreement. So they're getting this master MBA class in business ownership. And then at the end of that 10 years, they get to decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to continue on with this? Do I want to sell this business? Am I handing it off to someone else in my life? What is it that I want to do? And sometimes they may say, I got this now. I know how to do this. I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to go hang my hat on my brand new sign that's my business. I'm ready now. No problem. That's fine. But it took all of that for you to learn everything to get to that point.
So you always recommend when it makes sense, of course, but this is a great way not to run just to run your own business.
Right.
But you're learning so much.
You are learning.
That it's not a step that should be skipped.
That's correct. And they give you so much training, hundreds of hours some of the concepts give you. And they make you the expert. So if you were not the expert, there are some concepts where they definitely need you to have expertise, but there are others where they want you to be completely a blank slate because they want to teach you exactly their way, how it is, what their process is, what their mode of expectation is, and then you take that and you go with it. Right?
That's brilliant.
But they give you everything. And then if someone doesn't know marketing, they hand you everything for marketing. They give you a website. They give you, your social media. They give you everything to get started. And then if you need to hire someone to do some, maybe copywriting, then you go and hire someone. But they give you all of that foundation that we talked about before. They give that all to you.
It's so beneficial, I can imagine. I want to take a step back. You mentioned how important networking is for potential and future franchisees, how important it's been for you and your business. How do you go about that on a day-to-day basis? Are you saying I should be at 3 events a week? I need to meet with X amount of people per day. Is it as planned as that?
I would start with your local chamber of commerce.
Okay.
Join your local chamber. They've been doing everything online and doing a great job, and soon they're going to start having, the in-person events. And then once you're in that chamber, then all of a sudden someone that's in that chamber will say, hey, there's this group that meets, every Friday at 12 o'clock. You should be a member. You should come join that. And then that's on, there are a lot of them are virtual. And then you jump into that. And then someone else will introduce you to someone else. And before you know it, you get overwhelmed, and now you're in 80 groups, and you're like, wait a second, I need to get back to my job. So there's a fine line, right? And you figure out which group works best for you and which ones have the people in there that you really feel are going to help you in the best way and that you want to help them, because networking is a give and take.
Always.
It's not just taking in. You've got to give out.
Hopefully it's more giving, and then it all comes around.
You got to be giving.
Do you look at people, because we've heard a lot of times, and we've talked about this in the past, how you see somebody and you say, oh, they could be a potential client and they're not too bad, or are you so focused on the relationship building and the giving first, and then you encourage following the rabbit hole, as you've said. You meet one person, they take you down this way, you meet a person down that path, you head back over here, and all of a sudden you've made a client.
Right. If I really feel that the person is not franchise worthy, then I have that honest discussion with them.
Okay.
I do. Because if I'm giving a candidate that's not fully vetted, the franchisor is expecting me to bring them someone who has been fully vetted. That is what my responsibility is. And if I don't do that, then Lisa gets a bad name out there in the franchise world, and people go, don't take Lisa's candidates, they're not good. So I will have that discussion and say, I don't think that this is the right fit for you right now. What I would suggest is stay on track with, let's say they're in finance. And I have a lot of, because of doing so much networking, I have so many connections that are staffing, recruiting people. And then I say, I'm introducing you to these people, they'll work with you to help find you whatever that next chapter is supposed to be, but this is not it right now. Because they don't want to make that mistake. The franchisor does not want them to make that mistake, right? You want to make sure that this is something that is good for every party.
Well, so you mentioned, do you view your market as a dual marketplace where it's the franchisees, but it's also servicing the franchisors as well? So are those relationships that you're focused on every single day as well?
100%. I listen to webinars every day about different franchisors so I can learn about them and I can understand them. I'm not the expert and that's not my job, but to really be able to speak to them, about them, well and confidently, and understand, one of the things I ask a lot of the franchisors, what did you do to help the franchise system during the pandemic? And some of them did. They helped secure loans, or they got, tenant agreements, extended, or rent forgiveness, or whatever it is. What were they, or they reduced their royalty fee, or, whatever it is that they did. I'm going to be really looking at that franchisor, right? Because they were so great during this difficult time. So I'm always asking questions about how strong the system is, and is it needs-based, and is there going to be something that it's going to keep them around for the next 10 years? Because I don't want my franchisee coming into something like this and, it's not a strong franchise and now kaplu. So yes, I'm looking both sides.
Wow. Lisa, this has been fascinating, especially as a novice like myself, and I'm sure a lot of people out there. You've answered a lot of questions. Hopefully you have a lot of outreach after this. How can people find you?
So social media all over, but you can look at Milestone Franchising, all one word, my website, LinkedIn, Facebook. All of my contact information is there, and as well as the Zoracle assessment is right on my website, so people can go and take it for themselves. They get the results, and then they probably might not understand it, and then I'll gladly explain it to them.
Lisa, thank you so much. You've been a tremendous guest. I'm Mike Rabinowitz. This has been Connect to Success on RVN TV. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for having me.